Still waiting on 2. There's 1. All right. Give just a second here. Somebody else has a little doggy. All right, well, we'll go with the 6 that we have, see what happens. I'm going to do my best to get through this class. I'm going to tell you right now that I am struggling with some severe pain in my leg. I don't know what's going on. I don't feel like sciatic or something, to the point where I can barely walk. And the worst part is sitting down. So for some reason, it feels a lot worse when I'm sitting down. So if I scream out something inappropriate at some point, it's not because I have Tourette's. It's just because every once in a while, this just stabbing pain just hits me, and there is no such thing as a comfortable position. Last 2 nights in a row, I almost got up in the middle of the night and drove myself to the ER. But it's been a little more manageable with self-medication. So we'll see how that goes. If for some reason I'm not able to get through all of this, then whatever we don't cover here, I'll record that and post that. But I'm going to try to get through all of this, and we'll see how it goes. All right. So how did you guys feel about the assignment this week? You guys, I think you all pretty much got it. And there's some interesting results there. We'll talk to each one of you when we look at your images, but it looks like that, you understood the technique well enough, and you came up with some kind of unique images. So kind of cool on that. Let's just go right into that. Oh, I guess I need my bridge window open first. Hang on 1 second. Okay. All right, so everybody's in a folder except Haley, so Haley's up first. And so the first thing I noticed when
I don't know why mine never goes onto a folder.
I mean, you have to physically put it in a folder before you compress it. Did you do that? Like you have to create a new folder? Huh. Yeah, I don't know. It just came in as a PSD file, a single PSD. But it's all right. It's no big deal. Since it's only one image, it's not that big a deal. The first thing that I noticed here, though, when I look at this is that there were issues between exposures keeping the camera in the same position. Am I right? Because it looks like it moved on you.
A little bit.
Yeah, I can see a ghost image basically in a couple of areas. But what I do see also is that telltale shadow. In the shadows, I'm seeing those complementary cyans, magentas, yellows, which tells me that you did, get the channels moved properly. You had you sent the PSD, so I looked at that and I saw that you had changed the bell itself to black and white and left everything
Mhm.
else in color. I think I actually like the bell in color. Let me open that up and look at it again.
It doesn't even look like the right color in the picture anyway, because it's not actually like brown or whatever it is. It's actually like a darker red.
Yeah, and that'll happen with this technique, the way the light is split. Let me share that so you guys can see it. Yeah, so this is the submission. When I turn off the black and white layer, now we've got, even though, again, we have an alignment problem with the layers, we get this, the same cyan, magenta, yellows, greens, whatever, in the bell as well. And I kind of like it. I kind of like the way that breaks up into that prism of colors. And that's kind of the idea behind the exercise. But either way, I mean, I give you credit for going the extra step to do something a little different with it. But because I think probably for me, because the color is not as strong in the background, and I wanted to see a little more, and that's why I like it probably without that turned on. Let me close that back up. I'm just going to save it the way it is, just so we have, there we go. And then let me get back to Bridge. All right. But yeah, I mean, when I look at it, like I said, so I can tell that you got the concept right. What was your the cloth or material or whatever that's hanging in the background? What is that exactly? Like, what color is the original thing?
Black.
Black. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it would have been a little on the dark. And what was so the one thing that's a little different, I think, with yours than anybody else's is I think your light source might have been a little softer than most instead of a hard edge, because I'm not seeing any distinct shadows coming off of this thing. And I think that's another reason that I liked, the color version of this, just to bring a little bit of that out. Because
Yeah, I just use my phone flashlight.
wow, well, my guess is then that there was a lot of ambient light probably in the room and the flashlight wasn't strong enough to overpower that, because, I do see shadows, but the flash on your phone is what created those shadows on the background. So I can tell that you moved it left and right, but they're just not overly strong. And that's probably the reason why, is that there's a lot of ambient light in the room. So a lot of the techniques, this one and what we're going to do for probably the next 3 weeks, really kind of rely on doing that in a little more of a dark environment. And whether that means, doing it at night or blocking windows, or, doing it in a room without windows or whatever, it's going to be a little easier for you guys to satisfy those, doing it in a little bit more of a dark environment. But it still worked. It still, split it up. And I think it probably worked to your advantage that the layers didn't line up, because that even gives us a little more of that color, the way that it breaks it up. Let me put this in that folder. There we go. And gonna move to Beth. Let's look at, so we had a lot of images here of you, or of yours rather, of your original images. And as I look at, like, across the top row here, so it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You actually had 7 images that you used as your source images. Um, I'm not sure how many of those. Well, let's just look through them. I'm not sure how many of them you actually used, but
I
because
just used 3 or 4 of them.
yeah, I was going to say you really can only use 3 because there's only 3 channels. And then it looks like the one that has, so this is the finished one, the one that has the most influence is the one that has the most light on it. And so we don't see that effect that I'm normally seeing on the item. I'm seeing it on your background, like I'm seeing it in the colors on your background. I'm definitely seeing it there. And I like your overall finished product. I mean, I especially liked a couple of things. So the title of the finished product here is, let's see if I can read it all here. Photoshop is the path to the dark side. Photoshop leads to anger. Photoshop leads to hate. Photoshop leads to suffering. I think that pretty much says it all. The one thing you should know about Photoshop is that it senses fear. So when you do something in Photoshop and it doesn't go the way you planned, it knows that. And so you never want to show fear. You just want to say, that's exactly what I meant to happen, and just move on from there, because it definitely will sense that from you. I think the computers are sometimes possessed anyway. We used to have, when I taught like week-long hands-on classes for photographers, it never failed that somebody would do something that was totally unrepeatable on anyone else's computer. They would have a mistake or a problem that we just simply couldn't duplicate on any other computer. And so we'd reboot the computer. If it still happened, I would tell them to take a piece of chalk and draw a cross on it and let it sit overnight. And that cross would hopefully expel the evil demons, because that's clearly a possessed computer. That was the only explanation we could come up with. But anyway, back to your image. I also liked your background image, this star pattern, which you say, the title of it is "I Stole This." Yeah, we all steal images like that. But anyway, so tell me a little bit about, I understand how we're getting the colors in the shadows on the background, but tell me about the halo around the Lego thing here. How did you achieve that?
I think it was in like layer. Is it in layers? I'd have to open Photoshop to remember, but it was like glow effects or something like that.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I'm going to actually share the Photoshop, because I did look at it, but I didn't go through the layers the way I just did. And I want to take a look at that. All right. So it's not going to let me do this. I bet it's going to bump me out of this as soon as I change this. Yep, it did. All right, no problem. Let me just reshare it. Okay. So this is your finished image. When I go back to just the background layer, now I'm seeing on the device itself, on this little Lego, now I'm seeing all of those color patterns that I would expect to see by changing the channel. So this is, you could have stopped right here and it would have been like, cool, she did it, she got it. But you went a little beyond that. So we added the star pattern over top. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Then there's another layer. Yeah, it was an outer glow. You took, you used the layer style outer glow. And then on top, you just put another version of that over top. Let me strip those back away and see if we can make a few changes here. So in your, on your layer of stars, let me unlock that. I'm going to cycle through some blending modes and see if we can find one that lets the star pattern show up everywhere but on the device. That one gets it close. All right, looks like we're going to go back to the screen areas, lighten or screen. Let's do screen. Oh, nope, color dodge is a little bit better. So let me compare. So that's color dodge and that's normal. Color dodge gives us, I don't know, it just changes it a little bit, gives us a little more definition still in the background, and it takes a little bit off the device. So now let's start adding. So there's your glow. There's your right glow. And then the image that you brought in on top, I'm going to play with that as well. Just opacity. No, it's not going to be opacity. Let me try some blending modes with that. I want to see something that'll still give us a good overall effect, but maybe show a little more of that. Doesn't look like we're going to get it. There's a few that are interesting, but not to the level that I was looking for. Okay. So anyway, yeah, if you go all the way back to your background layer, there's the basic technique where the channels have been combined, and then you just played with it a little bit more on top of that. So you ended up with something pretty interesting. Let's go back to that. It was a really good choice of subject. It would have been better, I think, to see a little more of that color play on the Lego itself. But it is a Lego, right? I'm just assuming. Yeah. But overall, I still like the effect, and I like the addition of the glow on top of that. And I do see the that color splitting on the background. So I know you got the channels right. All right, so let's just take the JPEG version of that, move that in. All right. So yeah, interesting. Let's go to Chris. So Chris has 3 variations of the same photo, basically, just with different. I'm assuming what you did was just mix the channels a little differently in each one of them, correct?
Yeah.
Ooh, hang on, let me get them up here. Oops, let's go to the first one, second one, third one. Yeah, so we're seeing those the shadows split into different colors on the background. We're also seeing a little bit of a different color on the figurine itself, but it's mostly going to be in the background where those split off. And that's the interesting part. That's one of the reasons we move a light source, because when a light source creates a distinct shadow in a particular direction that the other light direction doesn't touch, then that's when we get these color shifts and these splits. So it worked out pretty well. I really like the fact that the background's so far out of focus, and it just reduces that to these color shapes. I don't know if you have a preference as far as color is concerned, which one you like the best.
That the middle one.
The middle one, yeah.
Yeah, the other ones kind of like make it confusing looking at the figurine, so I like that one because you can see it. Yeah, like that, especially the green and red one. I don't really like that one too much.
Yeah, what happens on this one is that you get a better mix of white light on the figurine, whereas this one, it's split up a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, the green one gives it a little bit of a funky cast. But it's funny, again, how that works and how it splits that up. I just noticed earlier today, I have these LED night lights around the house in a couple of different rooms. And you can make them red, green, or blue, or white. And I just noticed, I hadn't noticed this before, but there is no white light in this night light. You can actually see the little light sources inside because it's a clear crystal front, and it's just red, green, and blue lights. And that's how they get each of the 3 colors. And to get white, they just turn them all on because, like we've talked about, red, green, and blue, when you use those 3 primary colors together, they create white light. So I thought that was kind of interesting that somebody used that technique to save themselves a little bit of production money in not having to have a 4th light source in that night light. Was pretty cool. And the same thing kind of happens here where we get, more even overlap on the face of these. All right, let's go to Eva's. Okay, so I love your subject matter. I love the, where did you find this?
My mother-in-law had it.
Wow.
It was up in the red barn. Yeah.
That is a piece of equipment right there. And
is.
then this is the
It
final.
weighs about 50 pounds. too.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah. it's heavy.
I've seen a few of these things before. I never worked on one quite this old. But I'd worked on a few that were almost this old, and it's so weird to see how they worked.
Right.
You know, you just every time you pushed one of those keys, it actually had a physical lever with an imprint of that letter that would fly out at the paper and throw toner on it. And yeah, they were all made of steel. So yeah, they're heavy as heck. But that was a great choice of subject, not only because of the fact that we have, all these surfaces and textures to play with, but just that it's just like such a cool piece overall. Oh, now I see the ribbon. So those two circular wells on top, left and right, that held the ribbon that went in front of the paper, and when the key came up, it slapped that ribbon, and that's what made the impression of the letter on the paper. And of course, if you had one of these, you had to have something else. There was something you had to have with a typewriter instead of a word processor. And what was that? Does anybody remember? I think even me and you might be the only ones that could remember it.
I don't know.
You'd had to have a bottle of whiteout because
whiteout,
that
right.
was the only way to make corrections. You literally had to paint white on the paper and then retype over it. Can you imagine trying to proofread something then and go back and make corrections? And then the other part, because I remember this, was if you had taken the paper out of the typewriter, forget about
yeah.
ever getting it to line up again.
Right.
There's no way you'd get the new letters to line up. Wow. Yeah. Just a huge, huge difference when we went from that to word processors. I saw a thing today. Somebody said, their most accurate proofreading occurs immediately after they hit send. That's when everybody looks at it and goes, oh crap, I misspelled that. That's grammatically incorrect, whatever. These things were a nightmare. And then you had, just to give you a little more nostalgia, each one had a different pitch as far as spacing between lines. Like you could set it for more or less spacing, but there was no real industry standard. So from one typewriter to another, you could have, different distances between the lines. I remember a writer named David Gerald. He's the guy that he wrote the script for one of the original Star Treks back in the 60s. It was like the most popular one ever. It was called The Trouble with Tribbles. And he wrote that episode. He had never written anything before. He was a college student and had seen the show and thought it was cool, and somehow found out DC Fontana was the script supervisor's name. He found out who she was and decided to write this script. And so they had what's the word I'm looking for? They had criteria for writers. If you're going to submit a script, it had to be so many pages long. And so he worked on this script to get it to the right number of pages. And then when he submitted it, realized that his line spacing was smaller than standard. So he had too many pages and had to go back and rewrite the whole thing. And he wrote a book about the whole experience, which is really funny to read. But yeah, I saw this immediately, and I started remembering all that cool stuff. So are these the only two source images that you used?
Yeah.
So again, with the one on the left being, it's not, they're not soft light sources, but they kind of record. The one on the right especially records more as a soft light source. So I think it would have been even more interesting and more pronounced with like a really hard spotlight or something across that. I'm not arguing with the results because I think the results are pretty cool. But yeah, I'd like to play with this thing sometime with this effect. You'll have to bring it to me though. I'm not lifting anything that heavy anymore. But yeah, pretty cool. I like that. All right, let's get to Jaden. So Jaden's got 3 different images, and it looks like, well, let me look at all 3 before I say anything. So the goose is the only one that I'm seeing colored shadows, like a lot of colored shadows on the object itself. The rest of them, we're getting the same, we're getting that same light split into those secondary colors in the background, and they're all really cool. I do like all of these. I think that one I like best just simply because of that, the wooden sculpture that it's on and the way the colors have shaped across that. Do you have a favorite one, Jaden, for any reason?
I like the goose the best.
Yeah, and I think I really think that one's really cute. And I think that one's pretty cool, especially, the way that loader bucket worked, the shadowing on that worked. But this one, because we're getting a little bit more color, not just in the base, but in the goose as well, I kind of like that. I think this is one that you could play with, maybe with a vignette or something to make that even a little bit stronger. I like the fact that you didn't crop. Normally I would say, oh, crop a little bit off the top. But when I look at that and I see that yellow shadow on the wall behind it, you really couldn't, because if you crop that shadow out, we kind of lose that mirror image. So that one's pretty cool. I like that one a lot. And then, so Alana did 3 different versions, and I like your title too, Dentophobia. And what I'm seeing it looks to me like in the, so the one on the right is a little more standard. The one on the left, you've added in a little more of a normal layer to the top. Is that correct? Because I'm seeing a little glow around. I'm seeing a little more, a little more detail in the faces of not so much on this one. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, on this one, I'm seeing a little more, a little different look on the tools themselves, and then obviously that glow as well. I didn't even notice the tooth in there until, yeah, that's a little, it's a little graphic. the little piece of bloody gauze in the background. And then the third, now this is the one I think where it's a little more pronounced, is that glow. I think we see the glow a little bit more in this one. Although I do like the face of the instruments in the other one a little bit. It has a little more color to it. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really, even the tooth that's on the gauze in the background has a little more color to it in the one without that glow. I think maybe I would have left the glow and, but masked it off of some of those areas a little bit to get a little more color. But anyway, I like all of them. Let me look at your, let's get the 3 different ones up here. So I think I know which one I like the best. Which one do you like?
I kind of like the darker, like blue-green one.
The top left or the top right?
Top right.
Yeah, that's the one I would have gone with too. I like especially when you shrink them down a little bit, I like it's that magenta cyan across the top in the background. Let me look at that one in both versions of that. So that's number 2. Yeah, I like both of those. I think maybe the glow in this one does add a little bit to it. So that's the one that we'll go with. So again, I like I have these tools, by the way. My ex-wife used to work for a dentist, so we have a lot of these tools that I use around the house for all kinds of things. That little dental pick. I have one that I actually use on my teeth, but I also have some older ones that, they're really good for getting into places that's, but because they've got a lot of strength to them. Like you can really, pull things out if something gets stuck, whatever. And then, that little mirror that kind of brings me back a little bit. And I actually have a pair of pliers that look just like that. I don't use them for that though. Yeah, that's, I think I like, I don't know. I think let's look at all of these together. So I like something about every one of them. I think that one, I think, is probably the most interesting arrangement and setup. I like the fact that the dental tools in the front actually create all these angles and triangles. So it's almost like the letter A. And then all of the other ones have these other little subtleties to them that they're all unique in one way or another. So, I mean, you guys did a good job. What did you think about, this particular assignment this week? Like, was there, I mean, you obviously got it. You obviously understood the concept. Are there any comments about it? Like, can you see a use for this for anything other than just playing around with it?
I mean, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I've used this a few times. I actually used it. Oh, wow. I did a little series of images. I don't think I have access to those anymore. Like not, let me just take a real quick look. I don't know that I still have those anywhere that I can get to. But I did a series of images and entered them in a competition, and they were different. They all used variations of this technique, but I'm betting enhancements, let's see, channel blends. No, I got rid of a bunch of stuff a long time ago, and it looks like those were, yeah, I don't see them in here anymore. Anyway, I had a folio of 8 images, and I titled the collection of them, I titled it Changing Channels. And I entered it, and like I said, each one had a different subject and a different technique, and there were a lot of different things done to each one of them. And it was probably my highest scoring entry that year. The judges loved the images, but not one of them could figure out how it was done. And I love that. I like being able to challenge somebody that way, especially somebody that's that knowledgeable, into saying, I love what you did, but I have no idea how you did it. So I think that there can be a real use for this, particularly in an environment where you have to photograph something that might be a little bit more mundane, and you just, have the ability to shake it up a bit. I know I did a couple of things for a company not too long ago where I had to take some very kind of standard images and make them look a little bit more interesting, but I don't know where those are. That was for Touchstone. Oh wait, here they are. I know there's at least one in this folder that uses this. Yeah, I actually see it in a couple, but I think this one is probably the one that had the most use. And I don't have the original image this is just an all silver piece of, it's actually a trophy that they won for their design, and it's just all silver. There's just nothing exciting about it at all. And so I used a similar technique to bring some of that out. And because if you look at these pieces, all of these pieces are pretty mundane. They're really, they're just metal. It's a very specific type of aluminum that this company designed, that they market. It's, this place is here in Wheeling, and I don't think anybody really realizes they make parts for the space shuttle. They make parts for the the airline industry. This is all the engineers standing with this I-beam. It's an aluminum I-beam. All these products that you're seeing here are made out of a very specific aluminum. They're very high strength, very low weight, and really cool. And then they had this thing, which they wanted me to photograph. This is not something that they made. This is part of the fuselage of, or actually part of the nose cone of one of the space shuttles that was struck by lightning on its ascent. It was hit 3 times. And as you look at this, these little squiggly things all over it, especially the one in the middle, those are lightning strikes that hit this. I think they may have made some of the materials here, and they got permission to get this nose cone after everything was deconstructed, and just to show that it was able to withstand these lightning strikes. But that's actually out of the nose cone of one of the space shuttles. It's pretty cool. All right, let's get back. I think everything's running a little slowly here. I'm copying a lot of files from one drive to another in the background. All right, so let's take a look at our finished images here and see if we can take a vote for which one you guys like the best. I'm not going to read the full title on this one again. This is Photoshop is the Path to the Dark Side. Let's just leave it at that, and ellipse ... at the end. So who votes for that one? All right, the typewriter, the dentophobia. Okay, the horse and chariot, the goose, and the bell. The goose is our winner. Let me get that one marked. Boy, I could easily throw up. You all did a really good job in different ways. I love the typewriter, but I think I'm enamored with the typewriter more than I am the effect, even though the effect looks good. And I think as much as I love the title and the work that went into the Jedi piece, man, they all just did so. I mean, I like them all, so I'm just gonna leave it with what you guys went with. The goose is going to be our winner for the week, and let's move on. So that's Jaden. Okay. So we're running a little ahead of schedule, which is good. We're gonna spend a little bit of time. Oh, I had sent out an announcement earlier about downloading some files. Did you guys get that? If you didn't, if there is anybody that didn't, for example, let me see your hand, and okay. So what I'm going to do is I'll send the link to that in the chat window here in a second, and you can just go ahead and download that. All right, so let's stop sharing that. All right, so that's the link for the files that we're going to be working on in the second part of the class. Since at least one of you still has to download these, while you're doing that, maybe I'll just give you a little bit of an overview. We may take a little break, even though it's a little bit early, just to allow everybody to get that. But so let me ask you a question. And this is the reason that this technique, we're going to look at this technique. For the next 3 weeks, actually, we're going to look at different variations of a similar technique. So if you had to photograph, let's say, an object for a commercial job, some company said, we have this product, we want you to photograph it, and we want you to make it interesting and unique, and we want it to be, really cool and stand out, even though it's not that interesting a piece. And your hands are further tied by the fact that you only have one light. what would you do? How would you approach that with a single light to make this thing a little more interesting? Anybody have any thought process on how you might tackle that? Because that's really
Do
what
it with
this, say that again, Chris?
do the project like we just did. You just keep the camera in the same position and move the light source. Like,
Yeah, so you're right. The only difference is that instead of working in channels and switching channels back and forth, we're actually going to work in layers. So what I did with the images that I sent you of that drill, um, each photograph is the same light. It's just one light. And the light source is moved from photo to photo to not only outline and highlight certain areas of the drill, but also to cast shadows and things like that that we can use to add drama. And the cool thing is that you can't really produce this any other way than the way we're going to do it. You couldn't, even if you had 5 or 10 lights, you really can't light an object this way. It's just not feasibly, it's not feasible. It's not really possible. I mean, it is, but my God, you would need to have such control over each light source that only, allowed it to hit a certain area of what can be a very small subject. So this is by far the more economical way to do it. It also allows you the most flexibility. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Tried to get a little bit of rest this afternoon, and it's really hard to sleep when you have this something dagger in your leg. So anyway, the final product will be kind of interesting. It's also going to let us dabble in 2 other areas in Photoshop that we haven't done yet. One is something called tool presets, and the other one is actions. And does anybody know what a Photoshop action actually does or what it's designed to do? So what an action does is it is an automated playback of something that you do a lot, something that you do in a repetitive way over and over again, maybe on the same file or maybe from one file to the next. It's something that you do all the time. And rather than have to do those steps manually every time, you can record them in an action and just hit one button. You hit play or whatever key on your keyboard you've assigned as the hotkey for that action. And it will automatically walk through those steps in the blink of an eye. Like you can have 25 things that you do to a file and it does them, faster than you can even see happen. So that's what an action does. And we're gonna use a sort of a simple one that we'll write to do this technique that we're gonna do. Eva, did you get those files? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, but it's gonna be a little while because my internet, we
Okay.
don't have high-speed internet.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Yeah,
Okay.
you're,
Yeah.
didn't you tell me you're like around out in Cameron or somewhere?
No, I'm in Weirton, but
Oh, you're
out
in
in the
Weirton.
country, yeah.
Oh,
So
so
yeah,
you're trying
high-speed
to,
internet.
yeah, you're trying to suck steak through a straw.
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha. All
Sometimes
right.
I head down to the library and stuck up there. So.
Is it giving you any kind of an update as far as how long? Just still trying to come in. All
Yeah.
right. So I tell you what we'll do. We will go ahead and take a little bit of a break now and let
Okay.
you try to catch up. If when we come back, you still don't have them,
Yeah.
that's fine. You'll just, kind of watch us go through some of the process. And then of course you'll have the recording to refer back
Right.
to because the assignment next week is going to be based on this. It's not dependent on the files that you're downloading. Those are just, to be used for the exercise. So it's about 4:43 going on 4:44. Let's go to 5 o'clock. We'll come back at 5. If you've got those, great. If not, we'll go ahead and get started and you can just kind of follow along. All right. We'll see you guys in about 15. Oh, so how you doing, Eva? You getting anywhere closer? Are we getting there? I'm not sure you're hearing me.
We're there.
Oh, you got them?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Great. Okay. Just let everybody get back in here. I think, Jaden, I'm never sure if you're there. Just, yeah, he's okay. She's there. And Haley, same thing. Are we there? Not quite. Haley's hanging behind just a little bit. Alana, that's pretty interesting. What are those pictures hanging on a line behind you?
Yeah, they are.
Do you know that that actually looks like a dark room? Like that's what we used to do in a dark room.
Yeah.
Hang pictures up across a line like that to let them dry. There's a lot of people now that have gone back to film. Like some people never shot it in the first place, and some that did have kind of gone back to it as a, just a different form of expression. For me, I shot film for years, and I processed film and printed both color and black and white, and I'm happy for the experience and what it taught me, but I do not want to go back there. That was very labor intensive. It was not repeatable. It smelled. It was not healthy. I can't believe that as many people are getting into it as possible. But anyway. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to open these images up and show them to you first. Where are they? Here we go. So, and I don't think I included this background in with yours, but that's fine. It doesn't matter for what we're going to do. You should probably just have the 5 images of the drill. And what we're going to do, each one of these, as you look at it, is lit with the same light, but from a different direction above, a little more in front above, from the right side, from the left side, and then there's that one. And then one is a little bit more of an overall base illumination, just in case there were areas that I didn't get with any of the other ones. And what we're going to do is combine these. We're going to work on basically 2 images at a time and combine them in a way that lets us define this drill in a way, like I said, that would be kind of difficult, if not impossible, any other way. So what I'm going to suggest that you do initially is just sort of watch what I do. Then I'll go back and I'll walk you through it step by step as you do it yourself. But it's a little bit of a confusing technique at first. And then, like I said, we're going to throw a little bit of a wrench into it and do something different anyway. So I'm going to start with, actually, this is going to be my base image because it's the one that has the least amount of light. And what I'm going to be doing is adding light to it from the other images. And so I don't want to start out, let's say, for example, the one that's lit the most. It would be a little more confusing to try to work with. That image is only if I need it at the very end. So I'm going to take that image, and then I'll take so the numbers are 4754 and 4752. These are the ones I'm going to open up, and I'll have to stop sharing this and get into Photoshop. So let me share that. All right. And let me size these down so that they're a little bit easier to see. All right, so the one that's on the left here is the one that I'm gonna use over and over again, and the one on the right is what I'm gonna bring data from. So here's a key. Here's the thing. 2 things that absolutely have to happen in shooting these images in order for this to work. Number 1 is that the camera has to be locked down. It has to be on a tripod or something that it is not going to move, because these images have to be in perfect registration for this to work. And the other thing for that to happen, for the same reason, is that they cannot be cropped in any way. So these are straight as they came out of the camera, so that they have, each one has exactly the same number of pixels horizontally and vertically. And so when I move one onto the other one, the way I'm going to do it, they should line up perfectly. And these images were actually shot during one of these classes, I think last year or the year before, I can't remember. So we did this on campus, again, just using this one light. Now I did use a flash. I think I had it in a strip box, like a small soft box. And there are some advantages to doing flash over continuous lighting. One is that the flash is typically more powerful than any ambient light. So even though it's light enough in the room to see by, the only influence that this image has is from that flash, because it's so much more powerful than the room light. So when you do this, if you're using a continuous light source of some sort, a flashlight or something along those lines, you are going to have to probably do this in a little bit of a darker space, so that that light becomes more dominant and you don't see things that you don't really need to see throughout the rest of the room. It's also going to affect how strong this effect is. All right, so as I start to go, I'm going to bring just the drill and pretty much maybe a little bit of the base as well from this image over to the one on the left. Now I could just hold the shift key down, take the move tool, and drag one on top of the other one. They would line up in perfect registration. But because I have 5 or 6 images that I'm going to work from, every time I did that, I would increase the size of this file by the base of the image. If you look at it, each of these files down here in the lower left-hand corner, it's telling me these are 57 megabyte files. So the first time I did this, I would make it a 114 megabyte file. The second time I did it, it would be a 170 megabyte file roughly. And it just keeps getting bigger. The bigger your files get, the more difficult they are to work on. They'll slow the computer down. They take more memory. So why not only bring over the data that I actually need? So what I'm going to do is take the lasso tool, and I'm just going to loosely draw around. I'm going to take a little bit of the base, but mostly I just want the drill. Let me add to that a little bit of this base. And so now I'm leaving out more than half of this file. So it's not going to increase the file size quite as dramatically. So once I've got my selection, I'm going to copy that. It's just Command C on a Mac or Control C on Windows. We'll copy that data to the clipboard. And then I can close that window up. And I'm left with just my original. Now, if I just hit paste, if I just do paste, it's not going to line up. In fact, I'll show you that. I'll just hit paste. And you can see as I turn that layer on and off that the 2 drills are not lined up. So let me drag that to the trash. And instead, I'm going to do, and I think there's a control for it here. It's under paste special. It's called paste in place. And the keyboard shortcut is Shift Command V or Shift Control V if you're on Windows. And what that does is it pastes it, and it pastes it directly over top of the data that's already there. So if I turn that layer on and off, you can see that they are completely in registration. Now, I don't want to start with this and start taking stuff away. I would rather start with not being able to see anything of what I just brought in and slowly paint it in. It's a much more intuitive technique to do it that way. Let me increase the size of this a little bit. And so to achieve that, what I'm going to do is put a layer mask on this layer. Now, if I just click the layer mask button in the bottom of the layers palette is the 3rd one from the left. There's this little chain link. There's a FX, which is your layer effects. And then the layer mask is the 3rd one. If I just click that, okay, it puts a layer mask on, and now I have to paint out everything that I don't want. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to make it a little bit easier. I'm just going to hold down the Option key as I click the layer mask, and that would be the Alt key on Windows. And when I click the layer mask button, it creates a black layer mask instead of a white one. A black layer mask is called a hide all. A white layer mask is called a reveal all. And it's just what it sounds like. If it has a white layer mask, it's revealing everything that's on that layer. If it's black, it's hiding everything. And to bring it back so that I can see it, all I have to do is take a white paintbrush. And in this case, I'm not even going to do 100%. I'm going to go down to like 50% so that I can bring this in a little bit at a time. I'm going to make sure that my paintbrush is a little bit on the soft edge. If you look in the options bar up here for my brush, you can see it's a 400 pixel brush. And it is you can tell by the icon that it's a very soft brush. If I change that, you can see now it's a hard brush. And that's a soft brush. I just want it to kind of, I don't want to be able to see the edges of my brush. I want it to fade out as it comes in. So I've got a 50% opacity white paintbrush. I'm going to be painting on, not on the layer, but on the layer mask. And you can tell which is targeted by which one has the outline around it. Now it's the layer, now it's the layer mask. It's got this little white outline. And so just to remind myself of what's on that layer that I'm bringing in, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click that, and it temporarily disables it so I can see what's on that layer and I know what it is that I want to bring in. All right, so back to my white paintbrush. I'm just going to start painting across the top of this drill. And I'll probably paint multiple times. I've got the I've got the 50% brush. So it's going to take several paint strokes to bring that in the way I want it. And I know that we have the base of this as well that's lit. So I'm going to bring that in, and then I'll do that little Shift key trick again, just to see if there's anything else. And I do see there's a little bit of a highlight under here. And I also see that what I did was I took away a little bit of the highlight on the back end that I didn't want to get rid of. So all I'm going to do is switch my color from white to black and paint, and it'll paint back in what I had erased before. All right, so let's take a look at that again. Is there anything? Yeah, it took a little bit of this. Oops, sorry, took a little bit of this away. So just by reversing my colors on my brush from black to white, I'm either hiding or revealing a little bit more of that mask. Let's see if there's anything else on here that I want. Oh, yeah, I want this back edge here. And that is, I actually took that away. So, oh wait, no, it's there. It is there. I'm sorry. It disappears when I turn that layer off. All right, so I did leave that. So it gets a little bit confusing as you start adding more and more layers to figure out what you're looking at and where it came from. So I'm pretty happy with what I've got with these two layers. So now I'm going to go to the next image. I'll open that up, and you may not see that because I'm not sharing that one. Well, let me do that. Well, let me try to do that. Again, everything's running a little slow because of what's going on in the background here on my computer. All right, so I'll share those two images. Okay. So that's the new one that I'm about to bring in, the smaller of the two. It's very similar to the one that I brought in, except the light source was moved forward a little bit. And you can see the word Hitachi is lit up a little bit better. There's also a little bit of light on the stock, the front stock here that I like, a little bit on the bottom, not so much on the top. I think I got that pretty well with the other image. So let me just take the lasso tool, go around the drill, copy it, close it, and then paste in place. And then I'm going to add a black layer mask so that it hides that. All right, so now let's look at what I want to bring in. Definitely want that Hitachi word, so we're going to take a white paintbrush and paint across that. Let's see what else we want. The stock down here has got some detail in it. Definitely want that. Maybe the back edge as well. And I'll just keep shift clicking to see. There's a little bit. Nope, I kind of like that. Let me turn that layer off. Yeah, so that's really all I brought in. Sorry, I have the spinning beach ball of death. There we go. Yeah, I'm kind of liking everything that I'm seeing there. Maybe just a little touch right here. I can see a little bit of light. Okay. All right, so that's 3, and I've got really only 1 left because I've already used, well, I have the one that's lit the most as well. So let's open this up. Let me share both of those. Trying to reduce this size a little bit. There we go. And as you look, I'm trying to move all of these screens around. As you look at this image, you can see the very front where the drill bit comes out has got some cool highlights on it. Down the front edge, the front plate, and maybe a wee little bit on top. So that's what I'm really going to be concerned with. Let me make a selection. Copy it, close it, and paste in place. And then the black layer mask to hide that. All right, so I know right off the bat, I want a little bit of this. Thought I saw a highlight up on top. Let's try that. And again, if I don't like it, I'll just paint back with white. And then I know down the front edge of this, we had a good bit of detail. All right, let's see if I missed anything. Nope, that's pretty much what I wanted off of that layer. So the only thing left, there are some dark areas right in through here that didn't really, none of the other layers had a lot of light there. And that's why I have this one that has this base exposure of everything. So let me open that one and I'll show that to you. So this image has, you know, it's pretty much front lit. And it was done intentionally for this reason. Just in case I had any of these dark areas, I wanted to be able to lighten that up. So let me select the drill, copy it, close it, paste in place, and a black layer mask. So all I want to bring in with a white paintbrush here is to fill in some of these areas that are a little too dark, particularly down front here. I actually didn't like that, so I'm going to take that back out. I don't want too much here. I actually like a little shadow, so I'm going to leave some of that. Probably a little bit under here. And then let's just see what I didn't bring. I'm kind of okay with that. Like, I don't want to really bring in any more. I just wanted to lighten the shadows up and bring it back. So that's what we started with. And then we'll add one layer at a time and you can watch. That's that, and that. So we took 5 images, combined them using layers to create this kind of, and I do see a little shadow area here. Maybe I need to lighten. There we go. Just a touch. to create that, which has all of this cool highlighting going on. Let me give a little bit more to this. You know, once I'm done with it, I can kind of look around and assess and see if there's anything. I just wanted to make sure that I got everything represented, but did it in a way that created a lot of shadow. Let me just look real quickly here. Yeah, there's a little piece up here I want to bring back. All right, we're good. And then I'll just carry this out just to finish it, just to make it a little more interesting. I have this image, this background image that you do not have. And I got it because it's it's kind of creepy looking, and it's in the same color scheme as what this one is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this, just hold the shift key down, drag it onto this image. And I'm going to make sure that it goes at the very bottom of the layer stack so that it is underneath all of that. I do need to resize it first. So let me turn these layers off. I can close this. And let me just transform this so that it fills, whoops, a little too much. There, fills the screen. And these layers, you can see, allow the background to show through. This one does not, because it's the original base layer. So I'm going to play and see if any of the blending modes will allow some of that background to come through. Yeah, there we go. That's one. Hang on one second here. There we go. They do, but it also creates some other issues. I'm seeing part of the drill looking transparent and so forth. So I'm going to have to use a different technique. I'm going to leave that set to normal, and I will create a composite layer at the very top of this that is this finished drill. And that's a keyboard combination. It's not an easy one to remember. On a Mac, it's Shift Option Command E. On Windows, it's Shift Alt Control E. And if you're on this top layer in your layer stack and you hit that command, it'll create a new layer at the very top that is a combination of all your other layers. And the only reason I'm doing that is that I need to make a selection of just this drill. And so I need that combination layer. I'm going to take my, the tool that I'm using is the quick select tool, and I'm just going to drag around my drill. You can see as I'm doing that, it is, it's creating this selection. It's adding to everything that I touch. Being careful not to touch the background because I just want the drill selected. Get a little bit of this on the base. I can refine this later, but I want to get it as close as possible. Yeah, that's pretty close. Now I have several ways I can bring this background in, and I think what I'm going to do is actually drag it to the top now. And I'm going to create a layer mask using that selection. When you have a selection active and you hit the layer mask button, it creates a mask. Of course, it's reversed, so I have to invert that layer mask. You see it's a black mask with a white part for the drill. I'm just going to hit Command I, Control I on Windows, and it will reverse that mask. And now what it's done is it's allowed me to see the background behind that drill. I'm going to add to that mask a little bit with some black to just let some of that base show through that it's sitting on. Maybe a little less than that. Just kind of feather it in. Don't want it all on the outside. And I think the other thing I want to do is maybe drop the opacity of that background. I think it's a little bit too distracting. And sometimes I'll even blur it a little bit. I'm going to go into filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Whoa, that's a little too much. Let's pull this back. Yeah, just about a 5 pixel blur, so 5 or 6 pixels. All right, so now, I mean, I could stop. There's a lot more I can do with this image. I did play with it initially. I took my paintbrush and I don't know if I don't even have I have a set of brushes that are lightning. And I brought those in and just stamped a couple of, created a new layer and stamped some lightning on here to make it kind of cool. I don't have those brushes loaded right now. I will show you the finished product here in a minute. But we're gonna walk through this process, all of us together here, as soon as we'll finish that part up, and then we'll walk you through a little slowly. Let me stop sharing that. And let me show you what the finished one looked like. Very close to where we were. So that's the, oh, there was another step. You notice that some of these have color. Some of these layers are colorized. Almost like I had, the light source that was used had a color gel on it. And that's a pretty easy thing to do as well. Let me go back to the image in Photoshop and I'll show you how even after the fact you can do that. So I've got all of these layers, that are each doing, I can turn off my composite layer now. I don't need that anymore. But you can see as I turn off each layer, I've got just a little piece of this. Let me find the one that's that back edge. It's actually this, it's actually that one, I believe. So let's see what happens if I take a hue and saturation adjustment layer and just start playing with color on that. Let me just click the colorize button for a second. Yeah, there we go. So I'm just looking, ignore the base of the drill, and just look at the back of the drill. As I drag this slider around, you can see I'm actually changing the color temperature of what's there. So you can do this with any of the layers. If you do it with one of the upper layers, let me turn that off for a second and drag it up to, say, that layer. If you use any of these layers, you have to understand that that hue and saturation adjustment layer is going to affect every layer below it. So it's actually hitting 3 different layers. If I only wanted to hit this one layer, what I do is group that together, these 2 layers together. And all I have to do that is hold down the Option key, the Alt key on Windows. And when my cursor, I'm holding that key down, when my cursor gets right between them, you see that it changes to this little down arrow. And when I click, it aligns or groups that adjustment to just that one layer. And now you can see that it changed how it did that. Of course, I wouldn't do it on that layer. I just wanted to do that as an example. All right, so those are things as far as like the background and colorizing the layers and so forth. You don't necessarily need to do any of that. Just wanted to show you what some of the possibilities were. So I'm going to strip away all of these layers except the background that I started with. And we'll do a little bit of this together, but we'll do, I'll throw a couple curveballs at you as we go through this. So we want to start with this image that's 4754 is the number on it. Let me go to Bridge and find the next image that we want to use. The next image, 4754 will be our base. And then we want to open up 4752. And let me share both of those with you. And now we're going to have you guys work along with me here. I'm going to get your images back out of the way. Hopefully. Okay. So here's the first step. Well, the first step is to get these two images open. Does everybody have these open? Okay. So we're going to go to 4752. I'm going to take the lasso tool and just draw a loose selection around the drill. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to make sure that you do get the whole drill. And we'll do the first layer sort of the way I did everything, and then I'm going to show you a little shortcut. So once you've got that selection made, you just want to copy that, which is Command or Control C, and then you can close that window up. And what you just copied is on your clipboard. It's just sort of hanging out there in space, waiting for you to use it. And to bring it in and to make sure that it is registered perfectly, you can't just paste. You have to paste in place. And that's either under the edit menu, paste special, paste in place, or the keyboard shortcut you see is Shift Command V, Shift Control V on Windows. And that'll paste right in on top like that. And as you turn that layer on and off, you should see that they're registered perfectly with each other. We all good there? All right, so the next step is to add a layer mask that hides all of this so that we're going to paint back in a little bit of what we want, but we don't want to paint it out. We want to paint it in. So to create a hide all layer mask, you hold down the Option key or the Alt key on Windows and click the layer mask button in the bottom of the layers palette, which is the third icon over. If your layers palette isn't showing, by the way, you can get that from under the window menu. Just select layers and it'll pop up somewhere. And then I can take my paintbrush and I'm going to make this about a 400 pixel brush. Make sure it's soft edged. You can see that up here. If you don't know how to increase or decrease the size or the softness of your brush, it's very easy. The bracket keys on your keyboard, which are the two keys just to the right of the P key, the right bracket increases the brush size. You can see it getting larger, and the left bracket decreases the brush size. And if you hold down the Shift key while you do that, it doesn't change the brush size, it changes the hardness of the brush. And so if you look at the icon in the options bar, you can see it's a very hard brush now. And if I hold Shift and hit the left bracket key, there are 4 levels of softness. It goes from 100%, 75, 50, and 25. So the bracket keys change the size, and the Shift bracket keys change the hardness. So I want about a 400 pixel soft edged brush. I want the opacity around 50% so that I'm not painting the whole thing back in. I'm going to have to build it up a little bit. And if I want to see what I want to bring in, I can hold down the Shift key and click that layer mask, and it'll temporarily show me what I'm going to bring back in. So I'm just going to start to paint on the top of this. Probably give more than 1, maybe 2, 3, or even 4 brush strokes.
For some reason, mine's like painting in shadows.
Painting shadows. All right, let me, I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to have you share your screen. So maybe there's an option that I have to see it. Okay. Let me see. I'm not seeing your layers palette. There we go. Okay. So you've got a hide all mask. That's correct. You're painting with white. That's correct. Let me see what happens when you paint in there. Turn your that top layer off temporarily. Oh, okay. You started with a different base image than we did. That's the difference. You started with the image that has a little more top and front light. We had one, I think 47. Let me go back and look at what that was. 4754 was our base image. You just were using a different base image. And you can do it. You can actually do this regardless of how you start with whatever base image. It just makes it a little bit easier to start with one that doesn't have a lot of light and slowly bring it in than one that does, and it gets a little confusing, like you can see. So I'll hold there for a second and let you kind of catch back up. I'm just going to do a little extra painting just to see. It's not a whole lot from that layer that I want to bring in, just the top and then the top of the base. So the confusing part comes in. Oh, you're muted, Chris. Were you trying to say something? Yeah, you're still muted. There we
I
go.
don't know it's like reversed. I don't.
Yeah, without going back and starting with a different image, and everything else you had set correctly. You had the white paintbrush on the black mask. That was all correct. It was just that you were bringing in a different layer to a different layer than what we were working on. So it is going to look different. The confusing part gets in when you have multiple layers, figuring out what it is that's on each layer and what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. That can be very confusing. So you just have to.
Doesn't it look like sometimes it adds light and then sometimes it like takes away?
It can, again, depending first of all on whether you're painting with black or white, and second of all, which layers you're working, or which two images you're working from. If you, for example, are if the layer that you're painting in has a lot of dark areas to it and you're painting that in, then yeah, it's going to make it look more shadow than it was originally.
All right.
So you just have to be careful that you're only painting on areas that are already dark, and you just want to add some light to it and make sure that the layer you're painting from has some light in those areas. That's the confusing part. So we're going to do one extra step here now, because I think we'll skip one of them. We're just going to do the action part. We're going to skip the tool preset because it's not really applicable for this. It could be, but I don't want to over complicate things. So we're doing the same thing here. Let me get back to Zoom for a second. Uh-oh. Why am I not seeing any of you guys? Oh, there we go. I lost you all for a second and now we're back. We're doing the same. We're going to do the same repetitive thing for each layer. So basically, once you make your selection around the drill, then you're doing the same steps for each one. We're copying it, closing the window, pasting in place. That's only 3 steps, but it's 3 steps that you have to do exactly right each time. Why not automate that so that once you've made your selection, you can just hit one button and have all 3 of them done. Actually 4, because you'd be creating a black layer mask as well. So let me show you how that works. Let me share that Photoshop screen. I probably should, yeah, I'm sorry, I need my other image open too. So let me get my 3rd image and then I'll share those. So again, just like before, I'm going to have you watch me go through this process and then I'm going to have you do it. So the one thing that you cannot write into an action are brush strokes, and that includes making selections. So you do have to draw the selection around the drill manually. Once you've done that though, the rest of it can be automated. So if you don't see your actions palette, you're just going to go to the window menu and select actions, and it'll pop up somewhere on your screen. And you probably only have at this point, you see, I've got a ton of these action folders. You probably only have one that says default actions. And so I think probably what I will have you do is actually create a set of actions, because as we go through the semester, we may do more of these, and this will give you a place to keep them. In the bottom of the actions palette, there are, again, a number of icons. The one that's second from the right, again, just watch it at this point and I'll go back and walk you through this. Second from the right, next to the trash can is the create new action, but the one to the left of that is to create a new set. Now you can't create a loose action that just floats out there in the middle of nowhere. You have to have it in a set. It has to be in a folder. So we would do the folder first. We would create the new set. It'll bring up this little new set dialog, and I would probably just name it like Art 385 so that you know that those are actions that you created in this class. And when you hit OK, it'll add that underneath your default actions in the action set. Now we can create an action inside that set. And that's the second from the right, which is next to the trash can, a little plus sign. When you click that, it'll come up with this new action dialog, and we'll give it a name and select which action set that it goes into. And you want to make sure that Art 385 is, well, when you do this, make sure that that's selected and not default actions. And the name of the action, we'll call it paste in place, because that's basically what we're doing. And we can give it a function key if we want. Now, when I click this, you can see that some of my function keys are available and some of them are not. This is telling me that all of the ones that are grayed out are already in use with something else. If I select F6, you may see either Shift Command or Shift Control will have a checkbox with it. That would mean that the normal F6 is already being used. In my case, it isn't. F6 is not assigned to anything. So I can select that. And what will happen is once this action is done, in order to play it back and to run it, all I have to do is hit the F6 key. Now, sometimes operating systems will lock out those F keys, and because it uses them for system functions, and you have to be able to disable that in your system software for this to work. But there are other ways to play these actions. You don't have to do that if it doesn't work for you. All right, now when I hit the record button, I have to be careful because everything I do in Photoshop from that point on is going to be recorded, and it's going to be part of that action. So I don't want to sneeze, because if I sneeze while I'm writing the action and I play it back, it's going to make me sneeze again. Now, come on, you're smarter than that. But anything I do in Photoshop will happen. So for example, if I'm recording this action and something doesn't work and I'm clicking on layers to find out what happened, it's actually recording all of that, and I don't want that. So I want to be very sure that when I click record, I'm ready to start moving. So I'll click record. Yeah, so it's telling me that the shortcut for this action will hide the shortcut for the color command. That's fine. I don't use that command, so I'm just going to hit OK. All right, so you see now in my actions palette, it's created this action called paste in place. And the red record button at the bottom is highlighted. It's red. It's showing me that I'm actually recording right now. So I've got my selection. So the first thing I'm going to do is just hit copy, which is Command C. And you see that as I do that, it shows up in the action. It's now the first step in my action. Then I'm going to close this window, and that'll also show up in the action, close window. And I'm back to my original image. Now you want to be sure that you only have 2 images open when you do this, because if you have more than 2, Photoshop can get confused about which window it's actually pasting this into. So you want to have the one, your base image, and you want to have the one that you copied from, and no others. So now I've got this copied. It's out on the clipboard. I'm going to do the paste in place action. And you see that it does add the paste. And if I expand that, it says with in place. So I know I got the right thing. Then I'm going to go to my layers palette and create that hide all layer mask by holding down the Option key and clicking the new layer mask button, and it creates this black mask. And now I go back to my actions palette and I see it's got a new step called make. It's a new channel, it's a mask channel using hide all. So it's just basically telling me it created a hide all layer mask. And at that point, I can click stop, which is the first button at the bottom of the actions palette. The red record light goes off, and now I've got this action. So let me see if it worked. I'm going to take that layer that I just created and throw it away. And I'm going to open that layer or that image up again, which you're not going to see unless I share that again. Okay, so I do have to make my selection around the drill. Well, once I do that, I'm going to hit F6 on my keyboard, and it should run through all of those steps almost instantaneously. Let's see if it works. I'm going to hit it here, bang, and there it is. So I've got this new layer pasted in place with a black layer mask. I mean, how much easier is that? That way, there are 4 steps involved. There are 5 steps, actually. You completely eliminate the possibility of making a mistake. So once you've got it right the first time, it's always going to be right. All right, so I'm going to throw that away, and we're going to, this is where it gets tricky, guys. We're going to walk you through writing this action, which is never easy. Actions are kind of funky. Let me get those windows up again. Okay. If you're brave enough, go ahead and make your selection around the drill in the image that you're going to be bringing in. And again, it doesn't matter at this point which images you're using. This is just to get the action right. You have to be careful when you're writing actions. If you write an action on a file and then try to play it back on a file that doesn't, that there's something very different from the file that you wrote the action on. Say, for example, there were multiple layers here. You'll get all sorts of weird error things that'll happen. But in this case, we're just working with background layers, so it should be fine. Okay, so once the selection is made, let's go to the actions palette. I'm actually going to throw away everything I just did. Just drag it to the trash, and we'll start from scratch. So the first thing to do is to create an action set. That's the folder icon in the bottom of the actions palette that says create new set, and title this Art 385. When you hit OK, you should see a new folder in the bottom of your actions palette that says Art 385. Everybody good there? Nobody's giving me a thumbs down, so I guess we're good. Okay, so then we're going to create the actual action. So to create a new action, you click the plus sign, which is just left of the trash can. It'll bring up the new action dialog. We'll title this Paste in Place. Make sure that the set that it's going to record into is Art 385 and not any others that you might have there. if you want to try to assign a function key to it, click the function key drop down and pick something that is not grayed out. The color we don't use because color doesn't work in the actions palette unless you're in a special display mode called button mode. I'll show you that in a second, but right now for this, it's not going to work anywhere. We're not going to see anything whether we select color or not. So your new action dialog should look like this: name, paste in place, set, Art 385, and function key. If you have an available function key, then go ahead and select that. Are we all there? Yay. Now's where it gets real, folks. Click record and hold your breath. If you get an error message like this that's telling you it's going to hide another command, just hit OK. And you should see your action paste in place show up inside the Art 385 folder in the actions palette. If you do, we're good to go to the next step. Since we already made the selection, all we have to do next is copy it, Command or Control C. Then close that window, which I'm just going to do Command W, be Control W on Windows. And you should see both of those steps in the actions palette. Then Shift Command V or Shift Control V will paste in place. You should see your image change, and then the third step in the action show up. Then we go to the Layers palette and create a Hide All Layer Mask. Hang on, it looks like I might have, my image froze up here. I want to make sure you guys are hearing me. There we go. So the next step is to create a Hide All Layer Mask by holding down the Option or the Alt key, clicking the layer mask icon, which is the third one from the left. And then let's go to the actions palette and see if it created the step called make. It did. And if all of that looks good, then click stop to stop recording. Now there is another step that I actually have in my action. So we're not going to do that right now, but let's say I actually had the text tool selected. Okay, I would then, after I run this action, I'd have to go to my tool palette, take my, select my brush tool, set the brush parameters the way I want, like set it to a 400 pixel brush, soft edge at 50%. There's actually a way to create a tool preset with all of those parameters, 400 pixels, soft edge, 50% opacity, all of the other things up there. I can create a brush that has everything that I want and write that into the action that once it does these 4 steps, it then selects that tool preset and I'm ready to start painting. Regardless of what tool I had selected, regardless of what my foreground and background colors were, it'll reset everything so that I'm ready to start. We're not going to do that for this action. I want to keep it a little simpler right now. But to test this, to see how well it worked, I'm going to have you guys throw away the layer that you just added and see if it works by using the action. So you'll have to open the image again that you wrote the action on and draw your selection around the drill again. So in the layers palette, throw that layer away that you just added and then open that image again. Draw your selection. Now, if you have a keyboard shortcut assigned, it'll show up on the right-hand side like mine is here. You can see F6 over here on the right. If you didn't assign a keyboard shortcut, that's okay. In order to run this action, all you have to do is make sure that you have that paste in place, that action highlighted. No other action or action set or step in the action. If I have this step selected and I try to run this, it's only going to run the last 2 steps. So I have to make sure that I have the entire action, the main action, highlighted in the actions palette. I don't have to worry about that if I'm using the keyboard shortcut. But if you didn't assign a keyboard shortcut, make sure you've got that. And then all you would do is either hit the keyboard shortcut, or if you don't have that, click the play button in the actions palette, which is the third one from the left, and it'll do exactly the same thing. And then if you go to your layers palette, you should see that layer with a hide all layer mask already in it. Now, let me stop sharing that. How many people got it right? Did it work for anybody? Hey, Jaden got it. Cool.
I messed up immediately.
Well, here's the good thing. All of this is recorded. So you can always go back, and whatever step it was that you missed, and you probably just missed one thing. And that's all it takes sometimes to really screw it up. Hang on, I'm frozen again. All right, and we're back. I keep freezing up a little bit here. I just want to make sure I don't go on while that's happening. So yeah, you can always go back. It's usually just one thing. When you really start writing complicated actions, and I have a lot of complicated actions, you have to debug them, meaning that they're not going to always work right off the bat. And there's a process whereby you go through, you set it up so that if the action encounters an error, it'll stop and tell you that it encountered an error. And then you can look in the actions palette and find out what step messed up and try to figure out what happened. Most of the time, like I said, it's because there's a difference between the file you wrote the action on and the one that you're running it on. So let's say, for example, I have actions that will add my copyright information to the bottom of the file. So let's say I have an action like that, and I'm writing an action that selects that text layer and moves it. Let's say I'm moving it from the left-hand corner to the right-hand corner, and I want to write an action that does that. And so I record the action, and in the action, it'll actually say select text layer, and it'll tell me what text layer it is. If I try to run that action on a file that does not already have that in there, it doesn't have that layer, and it's not named exactly that, I'll get an error. So there's a lot of things like that that can cause you problems. But beyond a shadow of a doubt, the two most powerful things in Photoshop from a creative standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint are layer masks and actions. If you learn to master both of those, there's not much you can't do in Photoshop. I mean, layer masks are the creative part and actions are the efficiency part. And it really makes a huge difference. I don't know if I showed you guys this before or not, but this is a device that I have. This is an add-on keyboard. It's a USB keyboard. It has 64 keys on it. And you can see that I've got all of these functions, all but 2 keys are being used right now. These are all actions. And some of them are very simple that only do 1 step. Some of them are complicated that actually might do 15 or 20 steps. But they're things that I do all the time. And I don't want to have to go digging through menus. Some of them are just to activate menu items that are buried in a submenu somewhere. And I hate submenus. I hate going up. Have you ever done this? You go up and you click on a menu and you come down to the submenu and you go over and it slips off and you have to go back and do it again. I hate that. So I actually have function keys for those submenu items that I use all the time. So I just hit a keyboard shortcut or use that because there aren't enough F keys on your keyboard to do everything I want to do. So I got that extra keyboard that I programmed for all of that stuff. So they're very powerful, but they are very, very confusing. What we just wrote is a fairly simple action. As we go through the semester, we are going to write more of those. And they will get a little more complicated and you will get frustrated. It's just going to happen because they're not easy, but they are so cool once you get it done. I want to show you if I can find it. There is a file that really takes advantage of this. Where would it be? I'm not sure if it's on this computer. Give me just a second here to find this. I'm copying 976 gigabytes worth of files from one drive to another, so everything is, it's going to take me another 14 hours to get them all. So everything's running just a little slow. Let me try it from the other direction. I know where it is. Yep, there we go. Okay. All right, got the file. Now let me share it with you guys. Bridge, there we go. Okay, so this file here is, this is a job that I did for the Ohio County Bar Association a while back, about 11 years ago. They wanted all the attorneys and judges photographed for this composite, and I think this was like a 60-inch print that we made and hung in the city building or the courthouse. I'm not sure where it went. And so there is a layer for each person. There's a layer for each name underneath each person. There's a couple of text layers in the center of this. This was a huge undertaking. First of all, not only to get all of these images in there, but to get them spaced properly. They're spaced, the space between each image and each row is identical in each one. The space between each row is identical. And there are a lot of, this took a lot of time to do. There are a lot of shortcuts that you can use for this. And this became a huge file. It was so big that I had to keep everything, all of the layers turned off except the row I was actually working on because there was just so much data here. But anyway, the point that I wanted to make as far as the how powerful actions are, I was doing a presentation for a group in New Jersey, and I showed them this image and I said, you know, if you had a job like this, how long do you think it would take you to put a composite like this together? And I got answers anywhere from like 8 hours to 3 weeks. Like some people, you know, are pretty good. They're like, I think I can do it in a day. Other people were like, it would take me forever. I said, what if I told you I can create this from scratch in 9 minutes? And they're like, you're crazy. Well, I had written an action that created a blank canvas this size, created a row of placeholders, took images from a folder, pasted them into each of the placeholders, and then created a new, I did it row by row, and then created all the text layers and put their names in it from a database. It took 9 minutes running in the background as I was talking, but in 9 minutes from scratch, it created this file. Now, when I actually made this file for them, it probably took me 2 or 3 days because there was a lot of stuff I didn't know at the time. I think I froze up. There we go. There was a lot of stuff I didn't know when I first put this together that I learned as I went through it. And if I were to do this again now, if I had to redo this now, I bet I could knock this out in about 2 hours, even from scratch, just using the alignment tools and the actions and things like that I've learned how to use because of this file. So they're very powerful. They can save you a ton of time. They can make you more creative. Let me stop sharing that. they're well worth taking the time to learn how to do. We'll work on a few more simple actions in the coming weeks, just to kind of get your feet wet in them. And then we'll talk about some of the things you can do and some of the things you can't do with them. But for next week, your assignment is, this is your most challenging one so far. I want you to photograph an object, any object you pick, the way I did these drill images, using a single light source that you move between exposures with the camera locked down somehow so that everything lines up perfectly. And then combine, I'd say keep it simple, maybe do 4 images, maybe do, your base image and 3 others. So you're only working with 4 images to combine them together, and let me see, send JPEGs of your 4 original images and then your finished composite, and just let me see how creative you can be in layering and blending these things together to create something that would have been almost impossible any other way. Again, you can pick any subject. Obviously, you can't do people this way, but any non-moving subject. And it should, to be effective, it should be something that has some texture to it, something that will create some shadows across the surface of it or whatever, that allows you to put highlights and things on edges and so forth. I'm not sure, what to tell you. I mean, I've seen all sorts of things done this way, but literally anything that, just like I said, has a little texture and has a little bit of shadowing to it should work. So it's probably the most challenging one that you'll do, you have done to date, but I think you might have some fun with this if you get the right object. And once you've photographed your 4 images, then you can sit and play with it. Watch this. As soon as I can get this posted, I'll post this video that has all the steps in it. If you get started on it before that and you hit a snag, just, email me or text me, and I'll, tell me what's happening, and I'll fill you in. Because it does take a couple of days to get these videos processed and posted on YouTube. So that's a tall order for you guys. Do we have any questions, issues, complaints? If you have no complaints, I don't want to hear complaints. Anything that is a concern for you that you think might be an issue in completing this? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, well, have fun with it, guys. This can be a lot of fun, but it can be challenging too. And let me know what those are. Whatever challenges you face, if you run into a snag, let me know what it was. You don't have to do the action part for the assignment. You can do it manually. The action I just showed you, if you wanted to automate some of this to make it a little easier, that's fine, but it's not part of the assignment. So don't worry about that if you don't want to do it that way. Got it? All right, guys, I'm going to let you go about 20 minutes early, and I'm going to go self-medicate again, and we'll see you all in about a week.